Welcome to the Living Well Show, where we have holistic conversations that inspire healing, hope, and transformation with your hosts, Dr. Albert and Shanique Tompkins. Hi, I'm Dr. Albert.
Good night. I'm Shanique.
Thank you for joining us. We hope that you all are doing well.
Well, tonight we have an exciting topic. Given the world of change that we're in with the pandemic and even right now with hurricane season, we're going to talk about how to identify anxiety and depression in our children because they've been asked to change, to be resilient on the fly. And this has an impact, we know, on our children, but we may not always know what their behaviors mean or when they're acting out or when they show signs of change, what that actually means. So tonight we have brought on Elizabeth Anderson, who will help us to identify anxiety and depression in our children. Now, Elizabeth is an agent of change that operates as a licensed professional counselor. She works with families, adults, children, and adolescents who struggle with a myriad of emotional, debilitating disorders. She works with persons struggling with previous or current trauma, disorders associated with depression, anxiety, ADHD, and grief. She is also licensed in the state of Texas and is absolutely amazing at helping clients adapt to change and overcome challenges. Good night, Elizabeth. Welcome to the Living Well show. Go ahead and greet the people tonight.
Hello. Yes, I am honored to have the opportunity, definitely to discuss something as crucial as mental health. It definitely is an area that has gotten a lot of attention over the past year, most definitely, increasingly more attention due to the pandemic and things of the sort. So, at any point that I am asked to give clarity, especially when it comes to the area of children experiencing mental health issues, that is something that I have done for quite some time. That is a focus of mine, even though I do also work with adults. I believe that our most vulnerable population sometimes gets overlooked. So I'm honored to be here to be able to bring clarity and information to that demographic of individuals.
Awesome. You mentioned a good point. It has received a lot of attention, this mental health challenge. Even with the past Olympics, we've seen Olympians who've been put under such great demand as children. And now they're adults and they're saying, I need a time out to deal with my mental health challenges. So, mental health challenges such as anxiety and depression do affect our children. But what I want to know, Elizabeth, is what is the difference between anxiety and depression?
So let's look at anxiety first. I see that a lot more often. And you're looking at having and experiencing consistent worry that isn't actually something that has manifested. So it's the fear
Mhm.
of what's to be expected instead of something that is actually ongoing. And what we want to look at when we look at anxiety, it comes with a host of symptoms such as rapid thinking, even having times where you can actually have a fight flight response. Is it fight flight or freeze response in certain areas? You have anxiety also deals with having difficulty in concentrating on tasks. You'll see also with having those automatic thoughts that are uncontrolling, where you just it's like a continual record playing without any stopping. So it's just, if you
Wow.
really want to sum it up, it's consistent worry and worry that interferes with everyday life. Okay. So
Okay.
that's anxiety. In depression, it's a little different. It's the more of the slower mood. It's where you may be looking at someone who once had a zeal for certain things begin to kind of withdraw, isolate, showing a lack of interest in the things that they once enjoyed. Depression also comes in the form of feeling kind of a low mood, not wanting to interact, low intrinsic motivation. It also can interfere with concentration as well. It also deals with how one perceives the things around them. Everything is looked through a lens of like dismal and despair. People with depression often feel as though there is no hope.
Well, thank you for explaining those differences because sometimes people use them in different ways. So we appreciate that clarity. So, actually, though, the next question would be how we recognize either anxiety or depression in our children.
Okay, great. So let's work with anxiety first. So it's different when it's in small children, if I say kind of the ages between 1 to 5, and then 5 to, I guess, 10, that elementary school age. And small kids, anxiety looks, now when I say small, I'm talking about maybe, let's move it to about 3 to 5. If you
Mm.
have kids that are having difficulties focusing, difficulties being still, right? Difficulties in articulating their emotions. Instead, they cry a lot. Excessive crying in the place of using and articulating words could also be a key indicator of a predisposition to anxiety at a young age. Okay. Tantrums. It could be several other things, but these are some key indicators as I have done kind of like a timeline in office to kind of see some different things that my client experienced at the ages of 2, 3, and 4, that there were some indicators of slight discomfort and anxiety then. And as it matriculates to school age, then we start looking at things that may manifest, such as tummy aches, are different illnesses. Sometimes kids have a worry and they don't know how to say, I'm worried. They don't have the vocabulary for it. So it manifests in behaviors they may avoid. Say, hey, well, I don't want to go out, or I don't want to play with my friends. So look at avoidant behavior as one way of maybe trying to key in and see that maybe that may be a symptom of something, in addition to the tummy aches, the unexplained aches in the body. Whereas if you can cancel out any other physical symptoms and they can't explain it, those are also some physical symptoms that can be indicators in children that they're dealing with anxiety. Nowadays, kids are really articulate. They could just say, hey, I'm worried, or I believe this is going to happen. Another pattern is negative thinking. Negative thinking in children, and sometimes you don't recognize that. Like, you'll get a kid that always sees the negative side of things. Well, that probably won't work. Well, I'll probably fail that. That's also an indicator of anxiety in children, just that negative pattern of thinking. Depression, when we look at depression, you see that more along the lines in the adolescent age. Not that children younger can't experience that, but what you look at in depression in youth are the symptoms where one at one time they did enjoy doing certain things and then they just stop. They no longer find it fun. They no longer are motivated. You'll see students who probably at one point had A's and B's eventually begin to have a decrease in their desire to do their work, which of course will then affect their grades. I think grades are a key indicator when you're looking at kids to see that they possibly could be struggling with something, especially if their norm is to kind of accelerate. Withdrawal with depression, low mood with depression, all of those things you'll see also in children and adolescents. I think the one thing that becomes most prominent that I've seen when kids are depressed is that they just kind of have this kind of blank stare, kind of this, apathetic appearance and tone. Okay, where it's kind of flat, like you don't get it really excited and they're just monotone. That's also a key indicator that there is something deeper going on.
So you've given us some areas to look at, especially in younger children who may not be able to articulate. We look at the tummy aches, we look at, the fidgeting. Those are good signs and symptoms, especially for those youngers. Now, what, as parents who are learning about this area, what are some things that we should do and definitely not do if we suspect that our child is feeling anxious about something? How do we handle and relate to this child?
Well, sometimes I guess I can start with the things that you can do. Things that you can do is first recognize when your child's behavior is changed, right? And that requires for you to kind of know your kid's normal, like what is their baseline? What are the things that they normally like to do? What is their normal mood look like? And then as you see them begin to kind of deviate from some of them, those norms, I would use those as key indicators that maybe something is going on. Anxiety starts with really small fears. I do want to say that in kids, it may start really small. It may just start as small as being afraid of a spider, being afraid of anything little. But if you're not able to kind of give context and bridge together and help bring what I call rationalization to the irrationality of those fears, they will begin to grow and to cross over into other areas of their life. So sometimes as parents, we just feel like, you're okay, you're fine. Like, get
Yeah.
over it.
Right.
Really? Mhm.
And thinking that, they're being dramatic or they're trying to get extra attention. And so I think the worst thing that we could do as parents is to ignore those symptoms. One thing with anxiety is that because we live in this like rapid pace world where everything is a deadline, everything is about how well you do it. It's like this high standard of perfection. And in the adult world, I mean, I don't think we're handling it all that well. So
Right.
imagine as
Yeah.
children with having this rapid, high expectation, high paced, overwhelming amount of work that they have to be able to accomplish and do, and not even considering their learning style, right?
Mm,
Or their temperament, or how they're handling and processing the information that you're giving them. I believe that because we already live in a high stress society, that they're going to get those influences in the schoolhouse. They're going to get those
mm,
influences if they're in extracurricular activities. I think the place that they should feel most safe to disclose what they're feeling is home. Okay.
mm,
One of the
yeah.
things that I encourage parents to understand is allowing your child to use I statements, allowing your child to say, I feel, and then
Mm,
I give them like emotional words to use to fill in because a lot of times they don't have that emotional
mm,
intelligence. And then that becomes the issue because if I can't tell you what I'm feeling, I am going to act it out. I am going to skip class because I no longer
mm,
want to deal with the stress of it. Right.
mm,
And then in a more severe response is when we started looking at self-medication, right? No one is listening to me. If we're not listening, if we're not paying attention, then now I go into trying to self-medicate in different ways. And what
mm,
they're really just trying to do is regulate those chemicals, regulate the anxious and the worry that they are constantly feeling. They want to feel calm. So
mm,
being attentive to knowing when your child kind of deviates from their baseline, encouraging them to be able to articulate their emotions and their feelings. That is really key because when they can come and feel like they can talk about their emotions and feelings to you, then you've created an environment where they can feel safe. Anxiety tells you that nowhere is safe.
mm.
Everything is a
That's
danger
good.
and
Mm,
everything is a concern.
that's
And
good.
so living in that state of being, what we want to do as parents is to let them know, hey, this is a safe place. Like there is no judgment in this space of time. One thing that I encourage parents to do is to set aside, even if it's like 5 minutes a day, to kind of connect with your child because relationship is key, right?
Mhm,
The lack thereof of relationship with the implementation of discipline then makes you also a danger, right? They have no
mm,
place to relieve. Depression is different. It's a very different animal. When it comes to children are depressed, there's a danger there because if they're in a place where they haven't been able, let me say it like this. There are times where depression may be the underlying issue, but I've
okay.
seen a lot of times that anxiety is the underlying issue, and it has
Mm,
gone on for so long that it
okay.
now has kind of, I say, kind of introverted into depression. So by the
Okay.
time today that they get to that stage, they're floating a line of hopelessness. Okay.
Mm,
As a parent, the most important thing is to begin to first pull way back and slowly come in with just small talk in a relationship and to really pay attention to how often your child is spending time alone, how
mm.
often you find that they are in their phones or on social media. Social media is one of the key influences
Yeah.
of teen
Yeah.
depression.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like putting fuel to a fire that's already lit. And because kids don't have the emotional intelligence to kind of know how to manage it, they are managing it with the very thing that is enhancing it, which is social media.
Really
So
good.
we want to look at how long are they spending by themselves, okay? Because the tendency to isolate feeds the depression, but what they're seeking is a safe place, but at the same time, they're feeding the very thing that is a danger to them. So pulling them out of their rooms, getting that time where they can socialize, having an opportunity to have them interact and talk about the things that they desire. When a parent recognizes that they're doing those things, they're trying to bring that kid and they're like, hey, they're just not responding, they won't talk to me, it is past time to get help. Anxiety is one thing. We can tend to that. We can address it, right? But depression, I wouldn't allow that to stay long at all, because there is a whole nother cognitive distortion of negativity that they start just spiraling down in their thoughts, and they stay there, and then they spiral all the way down. And then we look at self-harm, we look at
Mm,
suicide ideation, and at that
mm.
point, they need to be somewhere where they can get hands-on help and that they're being monitored.
Well, that's really good information, especially for us parents, so we know what we're dealing with and recognizing, especially during this COVID era where we're supposed to be socially distant and separate for certain people groups and things of that nature. So we appreciate those tips. But now, we're talking about going back to school, and it's one thing for me to know my child, how their baseline, as you mentioned. What about teachers? We may have some teachers listening to this. What things should they look out for, warning signs in terms of maybe anxiety or depression, so they can get a kind of heads up on what's going on with the child?
So in the classroom, anxiety plays out in two different ways. Either you'll have that student that's always on top of things, like that perfectionist, like, okay, did I do this right? Okay. And they're constantly doing this, right? And the
Okay.
reality is that would, because teachers want that engagement and because everything is measured by a grade,
Hmm.
right? It may not be at first glance something to pay attention to, but what you want to see is that when they do get that A minus or that B, that their whole world is shaken, right?
Mm.
That they become emotionally distraught or emotionally displaced with tears, or, just continually saying, oh my gosh, what did I do? What can I do better? You can tell the worry when it's present
Okay.
in that student, right? Because that's our type A that always needs to know that those grades are going to be there to affirm them and help them feel safe, right? But
Right.
on the other end of that is that child that can't get the work done. Can't get the work done, has zeros, can't get it on time. They're
Mm.
worrying too. But instead of that kind of overzealousness, what they have done is they've kind of chosen the flight. It's like,
Okay.
okay, this is too much. Why try? And I'm not going to do anything. Okay.
Yeah.
Depression is a little easier to recognize in the classroom because that's that child that kind of begins to not interact. And they slowly also begin to not engage with peers. They also begin to not engage as far as homework assignments. But with them, as opposed to the child that's not doing their work who's anxious, theirs is just a despair. Like, what's the point? What's the point of living? What's the point of doing this work? Nothing is going
Mm.
to turn out right. Okay. Whereas with anxiety, their reaction is more to the feeling of being overwhelmed other than feeling despair. So for teachers, I would like to think that there would be systems in place when you start recognizing at any point that a child is acting out in class, at any point that they're not coming to class. Like, all of those are indicators that something deeper is going on. If they have a lot of zeros and they're not doing their work, something is going on. I know that that's not something that has been maybe spoken or given to our educators to recognize, hey, this kid
Right.
isn't just goofing off. Like, there are some issues and some things that maybe he's dealing with and he may need extra help.
Thank you. That's good.
So back to parents, are there any self-evaluation tools that we can use, a checklist or something that we can use to identify if our child is dealing with anxiety or depression?
I think that the internet does a good job of kind of giving a generic listing of things that you can look for that your child could be experiencing. And you could kind of do that checklist that's given, but I think a more detailed explanation is given when you get them truly assessed. And typically, the professionals that do those diagnostics are psychologists. Okay. I do want to give a little insight to the three entities in the mental health field, because I see there's a lot of confusion, because maybe 20 years ago, all you went to was the psychiatrist. You go to
Right.
psychiatrist, he listens, he writes a prescription, and you go about your way. Well, as mental health has expanded and grown, they're recognizing that that was not the only caveat to mental health. So it's kind of broken up in three parts. Now you have your psychiatrist who still listens, and they provide medication. Their
Mm.
primary job is medication regulation. That's really important because I get a lot of clients that go and see a psychiatrist thinking that they're getting therapy. They're
Right.
not. They're getting
Right.
medicated. That is their
Mhm.
job. Okay. If my child is dealing with anxiety or depression, I want to get them truly assessed, and they are trained to read those assessments and to administer.
Mm.
Psychologists are diagnosticians, those are our assessments. Psychologists also have the education to counsel, but their focus is assessment. So they are the ones that, if you want to know, hey, if my child is dealing with anxiety or depression, I want to get them truly assessed, and they are trained to read those assessments and to administer them. Now, moving on into the field that I am in, which is a licensed professional counselor, we counsel, meaning we provide different type of therapeutic models to assist our clients in ways to help themselves to cope better, to manage life, to handle transitions, to handle things that are overwhelming, to handle the symptoms of depression and anxiety. And we provide therapeutic models to assist in that. So the three
Mhm.
of them work together if needed. Now, mind you, LPCs, I also have assessments. You can come, I have assessments, I know how to read them and get you to understand, okay, yes, your child definitely is struggling with this. However, psychologists have more.
Mhm.
They are more equipped in that area. That is their
Sure.
specialty. Whereas mine, I'm more equipped to help you with coping and the symptoms of depression, anxiety.
Okay. Well, thank you for explaining those three areas because, again, you're right. They're so vast now and people use them for different things, and the information sometimes can get skewed, especially on the internet area that we're living in now. So, are there any community resources or phone numbers, let's say in Texas, that people could utilize in terms of helping their child with depression or anxiety?
There are a ton of resources in the state of Texas as a whole, primarily the areas that I have worked in. They have the Harris Center, which is in Harris County. So we go by county.
Mhm.
You want to look at those county centers that provide mental health resources such as pamphlets, such as even connecting you with different agencies, with different therapists, help with addiction. They're a whole mental health hub. And that one
Okay.
is the Harris Center, and that one deals with Harris County. When you get to Montgomery County, we look at Tri County. It's called Tri County Behavioral Health. They also deal with a wide variety of ways to distribute information about symptoms in anxiety, depression, suicide. They also have a mental health hospital, and they also on their website definitely have a host of resources and things that you could obtain. So you kind of want to look at those behavioral health county centers that will provide those resources. Psychology Today is also a really good resource when you're looking for a therapist. I think within the state of Texas, you can go and find someone in your
Mm.
location by putting in your zip code.
And I guess those same principles apply for other states. If they just start with their state or county and begin to
Mhm.
look in behavioral health or mental health resources, they should be able to find a host of resources in their local area.
They really should. I know we're making efforts to reach out to the rural areas and other areas that had not had as many resources available as this inner city, but I've seen where they are branching out to provide information. We hold seminars based on different types of mental health issues in the community so people can be aware.
Those schools that are in the rural areas, they can connect with the larger cities to find a counselor if there's not a counselor at the school that their child is located at.
Yes, schools typically have the school therapist or school counselor, which is a different entity. They don't counsel. I know that we've made connections and established communication so that they have our cards and things there to give
Good.
to parents
Mm.
who are experiencing difficulties with their children. That is happening more so on a wider scale where now that counseling office is more than just for college stuff, or different things that it was when we were growing up. But now they're actually becoming a hub to connect their families with the community of mental health.
And just for more information, in terms of someone seeking an LPC, what kind of training should they be looking for? What kind of modalities that may be available, like play therapy, anything like that?
So it depends on the age of the child and the ability for them to articulate. Play therapy is great. It is evidence based for younger children who do not have the emotional intelligence or the vocabulary to say what they're feeling. In that respect, play therapy works. I've noticed sometimes while I'm doing play therapy, I'll have kids that can tell me exactly how they're feeling. And it's like, okay, maybe we should take a different approach here.
Right.
So it's for the therapist. I would entrust the therapist to kind of make that type of assessment to see, what best way to serve that child. When you look at adolescents, there are a host of things to deal with anxiety and depression. The most tried and true evidence based is cognitive behavioral. I like cognitive behavioral therapy because it deals with those distortions. It deals with the non evidence based thinking, the negative thinking, where everything is a catastrophe. I like that cognitive behavioral gives them a chart to say, okay, what is the evidence of this? And if they can't provide, okay, that this has happened or that this is showing me that this will happen, then we have to recognize that that's an irrational thought. There's no rationality because there's no evidence. And where there's no evidence, we can conclude that we don't know the outcome. So we can't guess it to be horrible and we can't guess it to be right.
Right.
So it just
Yeah.
kind of deals, it's a training. It is a training. It is weeks of coming and learning how to kind of restructure the thinking process. But it has been quite effective in my office. When you look at mental health, what I want people to know is that there is a difference between having a mental health issue and just having a bad day.
Right.
Right? Like you're going to have a bad day. You're going to feel sad. Like that's normal. Okay. You're going to have a worry. That's normal. So,
Yeah.
what you want to look at, you want to see how often this thing is occurring and how it is affecting their daily tasks.
Yes.
Okay. Their general everyday stuff. So, if you're noticing that those worries have them in such a whirlspin in their mind that they cannot seem to function normally, meaning, waking up, brushing teeth, washing face, going to school, completing those tasks. When you see that those things are being affected, now we have an issue.
That's
There's
good.
a problem now. With
Yeah.
depression, the same thing. Okay, you can be sad. We want you to be sad. That's normal. Crying is normal, right?
Right.
But
Right.
when they're not crying and they're not getting up and they're sleeping more than just after school, but 10 hours at a time and just don't want to leave their room, now that is affecting their everyday living. There's an issue there. So I wanted to make sure because sometimes, we think, oh my gosh, I'm worried, for 2 days and let me go and get some medication.
Right.
There's a norm to it, but you want to
Yeah.
recognize when you have deviated from that path and you no longer can run and do your everyday life.
That's good.
That has been awesome. You've helped us understand what to look for in our children, and you've done a really good job breaking down the difference between anxiety and depression because they often get clumped together. So we can see the difference, we can see the symptoms in our children. You've given us tools and tips to look out for and how to find a counselor. And then you've also helped us to help our children understand it's normal to have feelings. Sometimes we look on social media and everything is perfect, and that's not real life. You will be sad, but it does not mean that you have a mental health challenge. It just means that you're human and you have feelings. Elizabeth, you have been awesome on tonight. How can persons get in contact with you?
I have a profile on Psychology Today. I'm currently, you could just look up my name. If you put my name in the search engine, I come right on up. I'm very hands-on. If someone reaches out to me, I will respond within 24 hours, as long as it isn't the weekend. I try to be as personable as I can. I got into this field to help. And so I recognized when I was on the other side of it, when I would reach out to therapists, you wouldn't hear anything. Like they don't respond. So I work not be that kind of therapist. Even if I can't see you or even if I can't provide, I will definitely work to see who I can hook you up with and who I can connect you to who will have room on their schedule. So just please reach
Awesome.
out.
Awesome. We had a
Right.
viewer saying they're enjoying this so much. It's great information. Thank you. So, yes,
Yes.
we thank you for sharing your time, sharing your wisdom. Dr. Albert, do you have anything?
I thought it was a great conversation. We do appreciate it, especially during this COVID-19 era where, there's so much going on. So we thank you for that information. We thank you all for joining us today. And we appreciate guest Elizabeth sharing her expertise. We hope you learned something today that will help you to be better, do better, and live better. We'd love to hear from you. Please let us know how you're going to implement some of the information that Elizabeth has shared with us in terms of monitoring your child, their behavior by themselves or their baseline, and what you're doing to actually be more cognizant of that. And please remember to share, to like, and to subscribe, and to review this particular episode. And we look forward to seeing you again next week right here on the Living Well Show. Take care. God bless.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.